But now let's get down to the really interesting part and find out just what Debussy does to get these strange new sounds of Impressionism. Now, I say new sounds, even though they're 50 years old or more, but they become so imitated in American popular songs and in Hollywood scores and record album arrangements and whatnot, that these sounds seem to us like normal, almost everyday sounds. And yet, compared to the sound of Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms, they're absolutely new, brand new. And in the hands of a master like Debussy, they sound as fresh today as they did 50 years ago. Well, what are some of these ways Debussy invented for getting these sounds? Let's go to the piano and find out. Remember that little bit of music I played for you before to show you how Debussy uses little wisps of melody? Now, that comes from a little piano piece of his called Sails. And it paints a dreamy impression of graceful, gliding sailboats in the afternoon sun, perhaps, off in a hazy distance. How does he get that hazy sound? What does he actually do? Well, the method he uses to get this dreamy effect is one of the most important methods used in impressionistic music, and it's called using whole tones. Now, that's not a very hard word. Do you know what a whole tone is? It's simple. It's two half tones. Two halves make a whole, right? Right. Well, now, if you remember that the step from any note on the piano to the note right next to it, whether it's a white note or a black note, is a step of a half tone, you can see that the whole piano is made up of only half tones, one after another. Now, out of these half tones, we make what we call our chromatic scale. That's this one. And we also make all the other scales, like our ordinary major scale, which is some half tones and some whole tones. And that's this one. Now, that last one, for instance, that last step is a half tone. But now if we start at the same place and go up only by whole tones, only whole tones, then we get Debussy's whole tone scale, which sounds like this. Listen to that. Sort of mysterious and spooky. As you can hear, it's much less definite and final sounding than the ordinary scales. That's final. That's not final at all. And so out of this misty scale, Debussy has made this delicious little impression of hazy sailboats in the half light, floating and airy and without any definite outlines. That's nothing but a whole tone scale. You see, Debussy was always searching for new colors, new sounds, and so he used every unusual kind of scale, old or new, that he could lay his hands on, including a hard one we won't go into called the pentatonic scale. But he even went back many centuries to the old Greek scales, which are called modes. And he also used the modes that were used in church music over 1,000 years ago, and many other kinds of scales. But it's not only strange scales that make Debussy's music sound different. He also used the same scales as everybody else, major and minor. But he used them in new ways by making chords out of them that nobody had ever heard before. For instance, he would take this ordinary chord of 3 notes, and then he would add to it. And then he'd add more, and more, and then more, until it's become this new, complicated, misty, impressionistic chord. Then he could take that chord later and alter notes of it slightly to give another special color to it. You hear that? That's an impressionistic chord.